Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure for me to be speaking to you today. Um, I think Yinka set us up because I didn't expect she was going to have professional speakers come before me and Femi, and we were just talking between us that these people have set high jump for us. So how are we going to manage? And already the imposter syndrome thing is already, kicking in, because I'm thinking, wow, what do I have to say after, these 3 sessions that we've had? But apart from that, I've actually been really enriched. I think the insights that have come out from all of the speakers, I'm 24 years deep in my career, and I can pick something from everything everyone has said. It has resonated with me. From what Napa said around, I wish I had something like C.L.E.A.N to be able to show me the way, show me the roadmap. I started my career with Arthur Anderson. There used to be a Big Five back in the day. And coming into it, I didn't, in my office in Houston, which is the office that brought down the whole firm, I didn't know anybody that, but I didn't work on Aaron. I, didn't have anybody that looked like me, had the same background like me, didn't have a support system that could have taken me through, right, shown me the way. And with what OC was saying around being visible, I wouldn't say I'm naturally, I was conditioned to be a behind the scene kind of person, your classic, stay in the background, just do your work and did not speak up. And if there's something about my career that if I can go back to my young self and change, it is that, because I've denied myself so much opportunities that came my way, or opportunities to make myself visible and be known, and I didn't take it because I just didn't trust myself or had not conditioned myself to be able to, raise my hand and take up opportunities that were presented, that I was privileged to be presented. And at the same time, in dealing with what Nkebet was talking about around, work-life integration, and particularly around boundaries, in a consulting environment where you're constantly, your day is chaos, you exist in chaos. And being able to set boundaries, it's how you can create order within that chaotic environment that you're in. And as my sister was saying, we shock is something that it's part of life, right? You're going to experience it all the time. And for you to be able to speak up, to be visible, to manage your boundaries very well means you have to be resilient, you have to have that grit, because you're constantly going to encounter things that will try to disrupt you from, whatever plan that you've led ahead for yourself. So thank you, everyone, for that. I've really been enriched by it. While I make sure I get my notes so that I can live up to the people that came before us. Femi, I was just telling them how Yinka has set us up. But here we are. Yeah. So, and I chose to speak on this topic because I'll say my name is John Uwajumogu and I'm an imposter, right? Because this is something I've suffered and I continue to suffer it, right? It is something that, has stayed with me throughout my career and something that I've had to find a way to navigate through, and something I continue to look for ways to navigate through, because it's not something because challenges change, the nature, they evolve, they're not going to come in the same way that you encountered it the next time. You always, as you grow in your career, in fact, the more you grow in your career, the more the feeling of imposter syndrome faces you because you're leaving where you were before and you've elevated. And you know what? The pool becomes smaller. Now you're dealing, it's like when you went from primary school to secondary school and everybody who came to that good school, they were all bright students. So you're dealing with even smarter, brighter people. And that feeling of, do I belong here? Comes out again. So it's something that stays with you throughout. So there are a couple of things I want us to take away from the conversation we're having today. And we'll define what imposter syndrome is. We will look at, the archetypes, so that we can recognize it as we see the different dimensions of it. And then we would come up with strategies on how to overcome imposter syndrome. Now, with a lot of the things that we've talked about today, in one way or the other, helps you in overcoming it. So you'll recognize some of the things that I'll be saying. Our esteemed speakers have already touched on them. Hopefully, I'll provide an additional insights that you will find useful. Now, if you can move to the... No, let's skip to the other slide. Yes. So, at its basic form, it's really a feeling that you're inadequate, you don't belong, you're not enough. And by some cosmic chance, maybe your mother is a prayer warrior, you found yourself in this place that you don't belong. And sooner or later, they are going to find you out. They are going to ask you a question that you're unable to answer, or you're going to be put in a situation where you only show how of a silly person that you are, and everybody will laugh at you, and you bring shame to your family and your generation. So, and this has very negative and harmful implications. As I was saying earlier, this is something, if I could go back, I would change, which is that you don't raise your hand, when opportunities present themselves, because you don't think you're good enough for it. And and this is a personal one that applies to me a lot, when people compliment me, I think they're being facetious, they're not real. Or I'm taken aback, I'm like, let me stay away from this person while the going is good. Because if they get to know me and realize I don't know anything, then they've put me on this high and I'm just going to fall down. And this manifests itself in very interesting ways. Like I said, I'm 24 years deep in my career. I've worked in 3 countries. I lead energy and infrastructure for EY. And I found myself as consultants, we have to big up ourselves, right? Because we have to show our bona fides to our clients, credentialize ourselves. You need us, right? And sometimes I struggle with that. I try to minimize my experiences because, hey, I don't want to say all these things and they now think, okay, you're the specialist. Now, solve our problem for us and finally I'll be found out for the fool I am. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And once you don't deal with it, it results, in anxiety over your competence and frustration in your performance, which ultimately, cascades down to other problems that you don't want to deal with. Now, the interesting thing about this is that imposter syndrome is actually very, very common. There's a study that says that 75% of people experience it. And the remaining 25, they are narcissists and the other are either politicians. Because if you're going to be a politician, you can't have imposter syndrome. You have to have a certain level of delusion, right? I'm the only person who can solve this problem. I'm the second coming, right? So I think that's who make up the other 25. And there are a lot of historical figures, that have suffered, from imposter syndrome. So, for example, Moses in the Bible, you know. This is an Egyptian prince, you know, with a lot of responsibility. He was the prime minister of Egypt. And when he was given the opportunity to lead his people, in fact, being an Egyptian prince, if you think about it, that's actually when he was an imposter, because he wasn't really Egyptian, right? But when he now was found out and he returned to his authentic self and was given the privilege to lead his people out of slavery, he now started feeling like an imposter. Strange twist of fate. I'm sure when he was an Egyptian prince, he was prancing around the place, you know, barking orders. But when it's now time to be authentic self, then he started questioning his capacity. Queen Elizabeth, same thing. She was groomed to be a monarch right from when her, you know, uncle abdicated and her dad became the king. So from the time she was maybe 10 years old or 12 years old, can't remember, but if you watch The Crown, you will see it, right? She, you know, was groomed, and this is a sovereign. Like, being a monarch is that you're a sovereign to yourself. Like, if they say Nigeria, she's, you know, England, and yet she didn't feel that she had, you know, the capacity to lead a country. Because here she is working with, you know, prime ministers, people who highly educated, very accomplished. But the fact that she was a sovereign still, you know, she still suffered from that inadequacy. Sheryl Sandberg, who is the CEO of Facebook, you know, she's been very open about it. You know, this is somebody who mentored one of the, you know, geniuses of our time, and still felt that she wasn't enough, and that sooner or later somebody's going to find out she doesn't know anything. So it's more popular and commonplace than we think. Okay. Am I going forward or going back? Okay. So we've created some archetypes to show you what, you know, a imposter syndrome looks like, so that when you're going through, of course there are many more permutations than this, but as you're going through, you'll be able to identify some of the things, the triggers, right? And, you know, then you can be able to diagnose, you know, what aspects of the imposter syndrome pathology that you're dealing with. Now, the experts, right? This is where, and a number of the speakers have touched on this already, this is where you think that because you don't know everything, then I can't even proceed, I can't start, you know? I can only start until, you know, I'm very sure that I'm the best person in this thing. Why we should always seek for perfection in what we do or become experts. And I think OC had mentioned it, like find one thing that you're an expert on, but then you don't have to wait till you're an expert to get started. You just get started and you grow. Part of the learnings in life is not only, there's the book learning, and then there's experiential learning, right? On the job learning. And I think that's where you actually learn the most, because the sort of dynamics that exist in the real world cannot be created in a lab, you know, environment, in a classroom environment. So you can get started without having to be an expert. And this is an aspect of the pressure that creates imposter syndrome. Then the perfectionist. And I call this, and there's another term that I'm very comfortable, which is the procrastinating perfectionist. And this is where I fall in. Once you give me something to do, and this has followed me from secondary university to today, I feel that if I cannot do it the way I want to do it, the insights I want to come out so that when the client reads it, they're like, wow, these guys are on another level, then I don't get started. I'll just wait and wait and wait and wait till when I run out of time, 24 hours before, boom. Or as some of the people who are in this room that work with me, we'll keep turning it over. We'll keep turning it. There's no word I see that I can't rephrase. Like, it never gets done until, look, if we don't send this thing now, we're going to miss the deadline. And I remember a manager of mine that used to tell me that, look, sometimes mediocre and done is better than perfect and late. Because by the time you try to get it perfect, the time has passed. You know, you're trying to send something to a client and it is beautiful, it's insightful. Yes, it's great, but if you send it late and that time window has passed, it's moved on to someone else. Maybe send what you have that is good enough so that it gets them thinking and you can update on the fly. So procrastination, perfectionist. So you need to recognize that. Then obviously the superhero, where, you know, if whatever is given to me, I have to be the best at it. And this links into the lone wolf as well, which is that if I'm not the best, or if I need help, then maybe I'm not the one that really did this. And in my experience working in an advisory capacity where I have to work with so many people in a team, right? Being that I'm the partner, a lot of times I get the praise, right? But sometimes I ask myself, did I actually really do this? Or was it because of this person? Or was it because of this person? If I didn't have this person, would it have come out really good? Would I be exposed if I don't have these really good people around me? So, and it makes me sometimes, if I don't have them, it's hard for me to proceed. And it's a dangerous thing because in my position, it means I keep going back to the same pool of talent. And I'm not giving other people the opportunity to learn from the wealth of experience that I have, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, it's because of this person and this person. That's the only reason why I've been able to excel. And the last bit is that, and personally I struggle with this as well, which is, especially when I was in school, for any subject that I couldn't come in at ace, then I'm not good at it. I shouldn't even try, you know? And if by killing myself, or if I try and I squeeze through, then it's like they marked on the curve. Everybody in my class weren't smart enough, so we all made it because they're marked on the curve, right? Because I feel that if you're really good at it, then it should be simple. You should just come in and it comes naturally to you, which is a very defeatist way of thinking because a lot of things that are worth doing is going to be difficult. Like we've talked about grit, we've talked about just, you know, staying the course, resilience. You know, a lot of things are going to challenge you, and the only way you grow, muscle atrophy, supertrophy? Hypertrophy. You know, it's by challenging, tearing it, and then building on that. So let's go to the next one. So how do we deal with, what are the strategies for resolving imposter syndrome? Now, a lot of this relates in one way or the other, but the key central message is obviously believing in yourself and confidence, right? Confidence is key. A lot of the things that we've talked about today is having that confidence that I can do it. And that's why I talk about politicians not, having imposter syndrome, because, you know, you wake up, you've not done anything in your life, and you come out and you say, I am the best person that's going to solve all these problems for you, right? They don't lack confidence, that's for sure, right? And that's why a lot of times, and we'll go into this, we sit around, and the people who are deluded, the delusional, and the narcissist are the ones who progress. Because they're the ones who come out and bulldoze their way through. While you're there still thinking, my skill set is not enough for this. Like you were saying, Excel is not there. So, just because Excel is, you discount all the other experiences you have and capacity that you've built up and everything that's gotten you ready for that time in your life. So we'll start with we've curated it into 5. And you can see there's a theme to this. There's a list for everything. So hope you're taking notes. So it's self-awareness, how self-awareness, which is typically a good thing, can turn around and be can have negative implications, and I'll talk more on how it relates to imposter syndrome. Then participating and not waiting for Providence to find you. I think Osi talked about it where, you can pray all you want, but you need to go out there and do the work, right? Don't think that destiny or something is going to maneuver their way to reach you where you are. And then it's the idea that the people who do it are superhuman. Most of us exist, in that middle point of the bell curve. And when they say, you're one in a million, sometimes it's not actually a compliment. You're actually one out of a million. So there's there are a million of you. So same capacity, same, you're not special. You're just one of a million. So find your comfort zone because that suggests that you're able to develop mastery over your vocation, and then you have to leave it, because the only way you grow is to go and seek other comfort zones. So you have to keep finding and seeking new ones, because if you don't reach mastery over something, then it will be hard for you to build confidence. So you need to find something, whatever it is in your vocation. I think Osi was saying, if it's be the best SL person, be the best financial modeler in my environment, whatever it is, let's know that you are good. And when you know you can do this even when you sleep, then, you'll be able to raise your hand or even find opportunities and put yourself up for it. And then the last part is, fear, it's real. You have to accept it. There's a quote that says, if you fight when you're not afraid, it's nothing. If you do not fight when you're not afraid, it is nothing. But if you fight even though you're afraid, then it's everything. It's just knowing, because then it's courage. Because if there's an enemy and I charge that enemy because I'm not afraid, I'm actually delusional, right? I'm not even taking into the risk, right? But if I'm afraid and I run away, yes, well, I've taken the risk, and I'm like, I don't want to stand up to it. But if I'm afraid and I realize that I need to take this thing on, because one day I'm going to have to take it on, then that's everything. Because despite my fear, I'm not letting that hold me in place. I'm courageous enough to just keep pushing ahead. So do it scared. Do it, with your hand shaking, but do it. All right. So next slide, please. So about self-awareness, and I was talking about the whole one in a million. One of my colleagues, on what is written down, sorry, it's not very clear, is that when you're 20, you care about what people think about you, right? And then as you start, increasing, right, it decreases in a way, whereby when you get to the twilight of, I won't say the twilight, when you get to the best part of your life at 60, then you realize that people weren't really thinking about you. You weren't that important, right? You weren't, you were fodder for gossip for 2 minutes, and then after that it was all done, we moved on to the next, right? So why am I saying this? I mean, we are all wonderfully made, but remember, all, not just you. We are all wonderfully made, right? And the idea for that is, don't let being self-aware of your limitations or your shortcomings, or let me rephrase that, areas where you need to build capacity now limit you, in the sense that saying, because I don't have this, because as we're saying it, I come from a poor home, or I'm tall, I'm short, I'm big, that means I can't do this. No, it just means that I have this area that I have to find a strength that can overcome it. Sometimes that limitation can actually be a strength. A lot of people who come from more humble backgrounds have a hunger that privileged people can never understand and can never artificially create, right? Because you know what hunger is. You know what survival is. I mean, imagine Nigerians, we leave this place, we go to, Nigerians and Indians, they go to America, they go to the UK, everywhere, and because they know where they're coming from, right? If I don't get it done here, shit. Excuse my French. You're back to, Ojuelaban's. Cool. Oh, apologies that what I so you don't let what should be a positive, which is that you're self-aware, and which means your emotional intelligence is high, you have empathy, and you understand how actions affect people. But don't let it take a negative route where when that awareness reflects your areas that you need to improve, and then use that to hold yourself back and make it a convenient excuse to cower and not put yourself out. Okay? Sorry, this thing keeps. So, if you could move to the next slide. So, the next one, I hope I can say this right. Shoros, okay? Soros, okay. Yes. 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 The reality is that Providence is not going to find you. You know, sometimes you may win the lottery, but you don't plan your life based on that, right? You have to participate in the game of life. You know, a lot of times, you know, we sit in the sidelines and we watch, like I said earlier, we watch people that are potentially our colleagues that are less capable, but are the same as us, get ahead because they were bold enough or to take action. And then at times we resent them for that same thing, right, that we were unable to do. I don't know if you've had this experience when you were in school. When I was in school, we used to call it anti-maybe, which is the people in class, every time the teacher asks a question, they'll raise their hand. And then they're like, Auntie, maybe the answer is, then we always call them Auntie Maybe. So it's like teacher's pets, it's just, you know, they're always raising their hand. Well, nobody stops you from raising your hand. You know, you could do it yourself as well. But it's because you're letting fear or you're letting the people caricaturing you as teacher's pets stop you from doing what you're supposed to do. Then when somebody does it and they succeed, then you're holding it against them and you're becoming resentful, and then you're not a good team player, and everything goes downhill from there. So, you know, you need to speak up, you need to participate in the game of life, and that's where the difference is, you know. Are you a spectator or do you play, you know? Are you the master of your destiny? Are you letting other people dictate what's going to happen to you? And that's what happens if you don't say anything. Then decisions are made and you don't have the right to come and complain again. Just like now, in February, I hope you go and vote, because if you don't participate, then, you know, don't complain when you don't get what you didn't participate in choosing who the president could have been. So, and the mistake that a lot of us make is that sometimes when we speak up or we engage, we're going to make a mistake. And that's the worst thing, right? Or we will show our shortcomings, or we ask a question and, you know, people will then see how silly we are, right? And that's the worst mistake you can ever make, because that's inevitable. You're going to bomb, you know? You're going to do something that everybody will look at you like, what's going on here now? You know? I remember I had I was invited to make a speech, and it was here not in this hotel, but one of the ones that's in this area. And I find myself thinking I was completely talking gibberish. Till today, I believe I spoke gibberish because I didn't understand. Looking at a crowd like you was so terrifying, right? And told myself that I would never, ever speak again on any platform. But well, as luck would have it, the job that I have to go and engage and speak to clients. So I remember even with Femi, our initial, when we joined the UI, we were trying to, you know, show, hey, we are new boys in town, you know, give us work. And we decided we needed to go and do a healthcare event. But we were scared silly. You know, we didn't like, we're going to bring all these people. What are we going to say? But we started gingering ourselves up, like say, look, we can do it, we can do it. And it worked, right? It worked. And since then, we've done so many now, right? And look at me here, speaking to you. Perfect imposter syndrome sufferer. And sorry, if you can go back. And that last bit, which is 90% of success, is showing up. And show up means in different ways. It's like participating, coming, and the more you come, the more you improve. You said run slow to run fast, right? So it doesn't all happen in one day, but it's just consistency, the discipline and consistency around what you're supposed to be doing. Next slide. So this is about how most of us are within the bell curve, right? A lot of us have the same capacity, You have very few geniuses, right? Very few, Even the ones that we think that, genius, we'll find out that, they may not really be. I mean, we'll find out whether Elon Musk is one or not. Let's see what happens. But, what is the difference? The reason why a lot of the people, and this means your pastor, your boss, all these people that you see, is that they want it, and they're willing to work for it to get there. And they're willing to do everything that everybody else have talked about today. They're willing to be visible. They're willing to have discipline around managing their time and setting boundaries and making sure that they are focusing on the right things. They are building grit and resiliency so that it's not any time an issue comes up, they fall apart. They go through it. So we are all made wonderfully. We are children of God. We're a royal priesthood. We've been given, that capacity to do anything that we want. Indeed, he said, impossible is nothing, right? If most people can do it, you can do it. If you can move to the other slide. So if you look at it, a lot of us exist in that middle point. Now, but it's not static. That's not your destiny. You're not set there. You can move up and you can move down, right? It all depends on you, how much you're willing to put in and which part of that spectrum you want to be in. So the way this applies to, the imposter syndrome is that whenever you feel that these guys have some sort of special powers or special thing happening in their life that you don't have, there's something good and a deficit that we are all trying to overcome. We're all trying to figure it out, A lot of people that I work with, sometimes when we're going to pitch to a client, we just sit together and like, what are we going to tell them? But then you need to go back and say, okay, what am I bringing to the table? I'm not saying you should become a bullshit master, but you should ask yourself, what am I bringing to the table? I've had all these years of experience. I have a diversity of different viewpoints that they just don't have. They're not working with different companies. They don't understand some of the frameworks that we have on how to look at and, distill a situation. They don't have it. So there's something you're bringing to the table. Like, I work in energy, right? But I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to tell you how to extract, a better way to extract oil from the well, right? I won't. I'm not an engineer. But I'll tell you how geopolitics and the commercial environment is going to impact your business, right? Because I've looked at 5 or 6 or 7 different companies, and I've worked on transactions hundreds of times. You only work on one, right? So I'm actually bringing something, just so knowing what you're going to bring that's going to be a value add to them, and then being able to develop the skill sets so that it can be a value adder. Next one. So talked about finding your comfort zone and then leaving it. Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote David and Goliath, an outlier, said there's 10,000 hours you need to apply in terms of practice for you to become proficient. The underlying message in that is that if you're driven or you have passion for something, those hours would actually go by. But the key message for me is just putting in the work. There's no substitute for hard work. No matter how talented you are, unfulfilled potential, it's almost a cliche. There are so many people that have so much potential, but they never made it. I mean, for example, you see people who are athletic and are really tall, and they're basketball players, and you find shorter guys who wanted more. Some of the best basketball players, for example, shouldn't be the best basketball players. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, just coming from sheer physical ability, they shouldn't be, but they wanted it more than everybody else. Obama had no reason to be president of the US, right? But maybe that's a delusion thing. But he wanted it, right? He came out there and he found something that could resonate with people, and he stuck to it. So, you have to build your capacity. There's no substitute for hard work. Then it's not showing very well. There's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it talks about the plateau of latent potential. And this is something that resonates with me a lot. A number of times I've put in the work and I've just dropped halfway because I didn't see the results I wanted at the time I wanted it, right? I say, I'm going to start working out and I expect to lose weight by this point. And then I give myself 1 month. Then after 1 month, it doesn't happen. I'm like, this is nonsense. And I stop doing it, right? I need this client. I'm going to send this proposal to this client. They would love it, and they will give me this $1 million contract. And then no response, and I give up. I'll write this article, it will resonate, but I write it, I put it out, nobody reads it, then I give up. But what it says is that by being consistent and doing that work, right, you're building momentum that will get you to that crossover point, whereby once you get over that point, the benefits then become exponential. I mean, if you think about it, Burna Boy, for example, has been grinding, I mean, people think that the North African Giant, people think was his first album. He has had previous albums, right? But once African Giant came out, it's like he's a global phenomenon, right? Seems like it's an overnight success, but he's been putting in the work. And he used the example of the ice cube. If you put an ice cube until it reaches that point where, at 32 degrees or so, that's when all of a sudden it starts melting like drastically, right? So that is where your latent potential is. And you have to just keep being consistent, putting into the work to that, so that you get to that point. So, and it's another way of saying, focus on the process, less on the result. And everything everybody else has talked about leads to that, which is, are you managing your time? Are you being visible? Are you doing, if you do the things you're supposed to do, like the Bible said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all other things shall be added unto you. So if you do that, if you do the right things you're supposed to do, then everything else then comes, the outcome of that work. Femi is laughing because he thinks I'm a heathen, but he doesn't know. Okay, so the last bit is fear, and this is the biggest enemy, in the world. This is something that you always have to deal with every day. Life would always throw things that will scare you, throw things that you'll be like, gosh, how do I navigate this one? Just when you think you've hit it, something else comes. The heavy is the head that wears the crown. You want to become the top dog, you become top dog, then you start dealing with issues, with dimensions you've not dealt with before in your life. My biggest project in EY to date almost gave me high blood pressure because I just couldn't handle the dimensions of the challenges it was posing every day. I wake up in the morning, I don't even want to look at my email because I'm not just going to be like 10, client, or 100. No, just on this one client, on, internally, the people I was working with, on the clients. And these are things that I've not even dealt with before, right? So, I was afraid to now have certain conversations tough conversations, right, that I've not been prepared to have before. But you have to do it, right? Because it's not only about you, it's about the organization, it's about the people you work with, it's about everybody else that's within that ecosystem. So fear is something that we have to deal with. And it's something that exists, so we can't overcome it. No, we can overcome it, but it's not going to go away, right? So it's something you have to say, okay, it is here. I am afraid, but I'm going to do it, right? I'll do my legs shaking. I'll do my voice breaking, but I'm going to do it. You know, I will tell you what I need to tell you. Maybe I'll run away, but I said it, right? And we put in, this picture, this image of David and Goliath, because I'm sure David was scared, right? Imagine small boy with that giant. But at the same time, what if he had missed? What if that slingshot had missed? But he had to do it, or his entire generation was going to go. So it was important that he put himself out there. So in every and each situation that we find ourselves, and I don't know in what dimension it will come to you, I don't know in what way you will face it. It may not be at work, it may be in school, it may be in church, it can come in different ways. The thing is that acknowledge, yes, I'm afraid, but what do I need to now do? And if you've done a lot of the things you've heard today would have prepared you in dealing with that fear, in knowing that, look, it's just part of life. I'll go in with it and I'll do my best. Let the chips fall where they may. So with that, thank you.